My name is Nina Means, Director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator, and you're watching Workshop Wednesdays. For the last several
Mhm.
weeks, we've been doing quite a lot of work to be able to connect with you regarding the kinds of things that are going on in our business and to introduce you to some things that maybe you weren't aware of. Workshop Wednesdays is really where we've been talking about the career of technical design. And so, what we've been doing during this time is going through what we call the technical package. So if you're in our industry, you'll call it a tech pack, because that's just how we refer to it. It's a tech pack. So it's short for technical package. And what it does is it goes through all the specifications needed to create a garment. So if you go back to some of our earlier videos on Workshop Wednesday, you'll see that we've been going through page by page on every single element of the technical package. And so what you'll see is that you have an opportunity to work on a lot of these kinds of things digitally, which is really key during this climate during COVID-19. So, what we want to do is to introduce you to some jobs in our business that allow you to still work digitally, that allow you to work remotely in a lot of cases, maybe passing some samples back and forth through FedEx or other shipping methods. But this is an opportunity for us to kind of illustrate some of the jobs that you can do in our industry. This really is kind of a prequel to some of the other digital technology that we'd love to introduce you to. But this is an opportunity for us to be able to share with you what happens in our business. How do we produce product? What's the product development process? So, what I want to do is take some time to share with you our kind of our framework that we've been working from in terms of how we understand the product development process. I want to thank Michelle Washington, our instructional coordinator, for helping us generate this content for you and sharing this with you. You may have seen a survey gone out not too long ago if you're a part of our listserv on fashion.incubator at austincc.edu, where we're asking you, hey, what else do you want to learn? And so we're able to speak more into this space. You guys have overwhelmingly responded with product development, and we're looking forward to hearing from the rest of you. And so definitely respond. It's just a few quick questions that help us to help you to give you the information that you need to grow. So we're really
Mhm.
excited about that. Again, I want to start with sharing my screen with you guys. This is something that we do every single week. And what I do is I share that information with you. Let's see. Great. I share that information with you via my preview screen. And what we do is we've gone through every single week what the design process is. So, just to remind you of where we are and kind of placing us in space. So, the design process starts with step one is the mood board, ideation, or inspiration. Really, that's where we are kind of taking in all of the different ideas that we want to be able to create a product. And to, a lot of times during this ideation and inspiration page, this, if you work for another company, a lot of times this is also going to take into consideration sales data. And so you'll want to say not just what's inspirational visually, but what's inspirational based on what the customer has told you they would like to see next season. So if you created a beautiful dress last season and it came in black and red, and your customer is like, I love this dress, I love this dress, but it would be amazing if it came in blue. So guess what's happening, guys? You're going to be offering that dress in blue this season. So step one is the mood board, ideation, and inspiration. Who wouldn't be inspired by your customer? And then you go into step two, which may be a fashion illustration or sketch. For a lot of designers, this is just really the easiest way for us to get a lot of ideas down quickly. So we'll, either sketch it the way it's here on the croquis, which is just a full figured model. And I just mean, a full body there. Depending on your customer, you do want to draw the model appropriate to who your customer is. So consider that as well with the fashion illustration or sketch. Then we proceed to technical sketches, that it's really a technical design, a technical drawing that illustrates, where the stitches are, what the proportions should actually be. And a lot of times we give a lot more cues about how that garment should be put together through the technical sketch. Then we go on to something called the tech pack. And the technical sketch goes directly into the tech pack, and we start to build out a lot more specifications. And that's really where we're focused on here. But I will give you the other steps just so you know where it's going. But this tech pack, it really does become the hub of a multi-spoked wheel of a lot of different activities that come together to be able to bring product to stores. So it's not just about making one or two pieces of something that you or a friend or maybe a small batch of people may enjoy. It's really whenever you're stepping outside of a custom space or stepping outside of the one-off or two-off space, you're going to want a technical package to be able to characterize what it is that you've done so that other people can help you make more. So then the next step is going to be sourcing. And that's really where we're getting the materials and all of our trim together, deciding what kind of button or zipper should go onto the garment, what kind of fabric should be used to stitch it together. And then we send everything to the factory for sampling. So ideally, you really want to see the sample come back in the fabric that you're planning to sell it in, because that's really going to help you make a much more educated decision. There will be times when maybe the fabric that you want to use is not available. And so sometimes you have to use something like a substitute. Now, the substitute fabric may or may not really give you exactly what you're going for, and it may even hang differently. So be wary of that as much as possible, or at least find something that is comparable in that factory sampling space. So just be careful with that. Then we go on to the fit and review. So again, that fabric selection is going to make a huge difference about whether or not that fit and review is going to be accurate. So then you can make a sound decision at the design approval phase. So once we've approved the design, now we're ready to go into production and we know exactly what it is that we want to do there. So that's really, really exciting. So now this is really where we get a chance to share what we've done with a lot more people. So that's our quick overview on what the design process is. But again, we're really focused on number 4 here, which is a tech pack. So if you go back again to the other workshops that we've done on Wednesdays, you will see that there are a lot of different lessons on the other pages a part of this. And so please don't feel like, because I'm not covering all of those previous pages here, that those are still not available to you. So feel free, go back, watch them again if you need to. And we try to pack as much information in there as possible. But I'm sure that some of it will generate some questions. So feel free to send us an email, fashion.incubator@austincc.edu, or just follow us on YouTube, and we'll come back to it or drop a quick note in the comments, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. So, guys, what we're going to do is focus on the tech pack. But just a quick recap from last week, we talked about the construction guide. And this is really where we start to define more details about how the garment should be put together. This is kind of a continuation of a part of our colorway discussion from the week prior to that. But again, feel free to go back to our videos on our channel and subscribe. Subscribe to us on YouTube. So this is again, this is kind of where we reviewed all the content that's happening on the far left side. We want to know what the style number is and what the style name is, how that garment should be described, what category it fits into, and the size range available, the season, and then some additional information on where that garment is being made. The reason why we do this for stitches and seams specifically is because we need to know how every seam and stitch is coming together, because it tells the factory what machines are needed to put it together. So without that information, they may not, they could assume, but I don't really see a lot of stitch information on the sketch. So I don't see a lot of top stitching. I don't see any double needles or anything like that. And so the need for them to go into detail about how every seam comes together is really important, because that all happens on the inside of the garment. So if it's super clean finish like this, you're going to really need to, which just means that there aren't a lot of stitches showing on the sketch. You're going to want to go into a lot of detail about what stitches you want to put it together, because if you don't say, you'll get a lot of things, and a lot of times it'll probably be the least expensive activity or the least expensive process that they have available. And if your product is intended to be more expensive, then that could really hurt you. So you'll have to be very specific about how you want the garment to be put together in order for you to get the right garment back from the factory. So you may have had this experience before if you are just kind of striking out on your own and learning how to request garments from a factory. Even if you work for a large company, you may not have had to see some of these things. And so this is an opportunity as either a novice or someone who's, kind of been insulated in your role to be able to see all of the different components that a factory will need to be able to help you realize your product. So that's what the construction piece was primarily about, regarding stitches and seams and other constructions on the garment. So I wanted to let me get into what we're going to be talking about today. This is where we're going to be talking about, let's make this nice and big. So this is where we're talking about the spec page, and we call this um, points of measure. For short, it's the POM, but points of measure is really where we go through the details of a garment and what those measurements should be. And we have a very specific language that we use to describe that. And it's always described as a garment being laid flat on a table. So if you lay the garment flat on, a work table or your kitchen table, if you're just getting started, that the garment is completely flat facing you. So not with the shoulders, not looking at the back of the garment, looking at the front of the garment. So you're going to lay it out as flat as you possibly can, no folds, no wrinkles, no nothing. So with it looking like this, that's when we start taking the measurements that go into a specification page. What you'll notice at the top of the page is what we have on every single page of the tech pack. We go over the style number and the name of the garment. This is a knit t-shirt, so it sounds a bit simple, but I personally like to go into a bit more detail in my names. It should be either a knit sleeveless t-shirt or a knit short sleeve t-shirt or a knit long sleeve t-shirt, or if I know it's a v-neck, I want to say that as well. So sometimes my descriptions will say knit long sleeve v-neck t-shirt. That tells me mostly what I need to know. And so I feel like the descriptions are important, especially when you get a lot of t-shirts in your collection. So style name, the factory, the self fabric just means what's the primary fabric of the garment. And then the contrast fabric, if you have a contrasting, piece, like if you did like a white t-shirt with black sleeves or, vice versa, that's an opportunity for you to say, think like a baseball shirt, something like that, right? Um, Fabric content, we'll want to know, like, is it cotton? Is it cotton spandex? Because that's going to inform your pattern maker. It's going to inform how the garment should perform over time. So cotton versus cotton spandex may give you different performance. And then, we go into a bit more on just a date, who the technical designer is, the sample size, the size range, and then the sample color. Some colors, primarily whenever you're dealing with denim, excuse me, some colors will affect the fit of the garment. In denim, we've seen this quite a lot more because it's whenever you're bleaching the denim, it'll actually reduce the stretch and it breaks down a lot of the fibers. And so sometimes you need to add more ease into denim whenever it's been heavily processed because it's not as stretchy. A lot of those like spandex fibers that we've come to love in our stretch denim. If you like stretch denim, a lot of those things get broken down in the process of bleaching it. And so that's something to consider whenever you're, kind of looking at your specs. So you may do this one in a specific color that has a tweak to the side, to the fit based on how the material operates. So those are all things to kind of think about. But the points of measure, here at the top, I've got like a highlighted bar that just has everything labeled across the top. So it gives me like which measurement am I talking about? So it just numbers them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the next section, oh, would you like a cracker? Yes. I got my little one here. Yes. Would you like another cracker for the other hand? Yes. There you go. So point of measure. So you have the number that are listed of which measurement point are you referring to. So it's just numbered one, in order to however many you need. There's no right or wrong here, but more descriptive is better. Then you're going to do a description um, for the measurement points that you want to capture. And then that next section, it says TOL, with in parentheses, it says minus and plus. And that is what our tolerances are. This part is really important. It may be just as important as your actual specification details, because what happens there is it tells the factory how much error are you willing to accept. So how wrong can they be? So whenever you tell them, here are my tolerances plus or minus this, it's typically in inches. So I try to make sure that I denote what my measurement here just says half, quarter, 1/8. The assumption is that that is inches. But what I would recommend that you do is to use those two little, quotation marks that indicate inches whenever you do that. Because if you don't, you're leaving things to be assumed. And I would recommend not leaving anything to be assumed. So intolerances plus or minus 1/2 inch. That's saying that they could go smaller than a half inch or larger than a half inch. But you know what the total variance is 1 inch. So like imagine like, you get a box of t-shirts and the length of the full shirt is half of an inch slightly different from each one. So if the cutter cut it a little too much or a little bit more than another one, then each shirt could be slightly off by half an inch, give or take, which could be an inch depending on where in the box you're looking, right? So that's a huge deal. You should only use half-inch tolerances in spaces where it doesn't matter so much for the design detail. So what you'll notice is that there's some points, like the body length, you may not, for the average customer, you may not actually be able to visually see a half inch. If you're a trained designer or pattern maker, you'll see an eighth. But if you are, just kind of the average person walking into the store buying a t-shirt, the last thing you're going to do, at least last thing most people do, is to take all of them off the rack, lay them all out and see which one's going to be longer or shorter, or try on several of the exact same size. Typically what you do is you find one of different sizes to find out which size fits you best in that brand, right? So normally, instead of me saying I'm going to take two smalls into the dressing room, I'm going to take a small and a medium, or I'm going to take a medium and a large, to be able to figure out which size fits me best. So typically you won't see a problem with having a half-inch difference in the body length, because typically it will fit someone. But that's something to consider regarding the tolerances. Is my rule of thumb and how to determine what tolerances I should assign to this is, if it's a design detail that I care about deeply and it makes a difference to the customer, like it's visible, then I put a smaller tolerance. Like my willingness for that to be different is much narrower. Now, you can't say to other people, because people put your clothes together, okay? No tolerance is allowed because perfection is absolutely impossible. So sorry to break it to you. There will probably be some minor differences from what you request to what you get. The tolerances help you to say, these are the ones that I care about the most. These are the ones that are most important to the design. And these are the ones, um, that will make the most difference in the ultimate experience of the customer. So this is really important here. So what I would say is, so there are certain things that are much more visible. Like on number 5, it says the neck trim height. And so if you think about any t-shirt you have and you think about what happens at the neckline, there's typically like a band of about 5/8 width around the neckline of your t-shirt. It varies, it may not always be 5/8, but there's typically a band around the neckline for your t-shirt, and then it gets set into the top edge of your t-shirt. what you'll want to do there is to be able to kind of to speak clearly about how much variance in the width of that is allowed. So, like, is it too much if it becomes a quarter inch more and now it looks like it's more than 3/4 width, or is it, too much if it's been cut down to almost a quarter or 3/8? That's a big deal, and so whenever you tell the factory what's acceptable here, they say it's a 1/8 difference is acceptable for the change in the width of the neck trim. And I think that that's actually true, because what you'll notice whenever they're all hanging up on the rack is you'll see the necklines. Yeah, I know. Kangaroos. I know, I see them. So you'll see the necklines all lined up. And so it's going to be really important for you to be able to, um, you know, to be able to have a consistency in the appearance of the garments on the rack. So that's another reason why you may want to consider making the tolerances tighter. Michelle actually came up with some really great content here. So I'm actually going to flip over to that really quickly because I don't want to leave out some of the wonderful comments that she made. So another thing to consider here in the spec space, let's see. Oh, that's not the one I wanted to refer to. Give me just a second. We've got about 6 minutes here. Almost. This has been such, I mean, I can only imagine, you guys are probably watching from home or, calling in or checking in, from, wherever you're working remotely. And so, our lives are, everyone's lives have been kind of turned, upside down in a way that I think has been, great for family. It's been good for us to be able to spend so much time together. And so, we just kind of roll with it and figure out what we need to do to make all of these things work together. So, okay, these are some of the notes that. So here's the thing. I wanted to refer back to some of the notes that Michelle Washington had come up with, and I thought were really good here. Because what happens on the specification page is so much bigger than just the spec page in and of itself. I think you can still see the spec page. So I'm going to just kind of keep talking on top of it. Um, so the garment spec sheet can originate from different sources. So it's like, where does all this stuff come from? Sometimes it could be the buyer or designer discussing new ranges directly with the factories and arranging or approving samples to be sent to a head office. There could also be a company that may have its own pattern and sample room, and those initial spec sheets will be created at the same time that the samples are made. And so as you're creating the garment, you may be draping or you may be just, drafting the pattern directly from the sketch. Sometimes what will happen is that these specs will come directly from the sample that looks the closest to what the original design intention was. So in layman's terms, it just means you make the sample, you lay the sample flat, you measure it, and you create this point of measure sheet. And that may be done with your own pattern maker or sample room, or just yourself as a designer. It can come from creating new variations from an existing style. So, like if you were actually selling a jacket, or if you have a jacket in your closet that you're like, I love the way this fits, what's happening here in this garment? You lay the garment flat and you get a chance to measure it. And then you change your updates based on what it should be. So you may see that there's an opportunity to do other things. uh, so what you'll do is we've got a comedian back here. So what you'll do is you'll get a chance to lean into what you liked about that garment, but then being able to update it with your own. So that's something to be, you can be inspired by, but be careful with being overly inspired. You don't want to just rip it off. But sometimes starting with a base silhouette can help you with your design, because it works already. You can also, this sheet can also get generated from using the existing specification sheet that requires updating. So if you have a style that you've already worked on before, kind of like the example I had earlier where you got a dress that did really well in a couple of colors, but maybe in addition to the customers saying that they really liked those two colors and they loved the dress, that they were actually also asking for it to be just a little bit longer because maybe they didn't like, oh, I don't like my knees showing, or the sleeve length isn't quite long enough for me. Now, this is an opportunity for you to take your existing specifications, your existing points of measure, and update them accurately based on some of the customers' feedback of what it is that they may want. So, something to keep in mind here is that, the more complicated a garment is, the longer the specification sheet will be. You'll have a lot more than 20 points of measure. I've seen some get very, very lengthy, especially with denim and other, product that has, a lot more placement of pockets and belt loops and, other construction details that are really important. You'll highlight which one you want to do your sample in. But a lot of times what will happen is you'll actually create the specs based on the sample that you've done and fill it in. But I would say, anytime you're looking at creating what happens at the different stages, talking about how you make the different sizes is a much larger conversation than what we have time to talk about today. But I do want to get a chance to just give you a generalized idea about what's happening there. Typically, you are changing your sizes based on small tweaks as you go up or down in size. Um, my rule of thumb is that wherever my size range is, you're okay, come here. You're okay, come here. Wherever your size range is, come here, look. Um, wherever your size range is, I would suggest that you actually put your sample at the middle. Because what is going to happen is that your middle should actually represent probably where your volume is in terms of your product and in terms of how many units you're going to probably be purchasing. And it should also represent probably most likely your typical customer as opposed to your, you know, maybe what we've typically done in the model space. That's now changing. So that's a good thing that we're seeing a change. But the reason why I say that is because as you size up and size down, you'll actually see some skewing of your sizes, and that is a much larger conversation. That just means that everything doesn't size up and size down exactly, and it doesn't always fit perfectly just because you've applied the measurements correctly. So I want you to be aware that there's still so much that we can talk about regarding the points of measure. I just wanted to give you an overview about this. There's a lot of cost implications that go into this. There's a lot of design implications that go into this. The factory selections about how they execute on their end is really important here. And so there are a lot of details on this page, just like the construction page, that will affect your ability to manufacture this product in the future. But if we're just talking product development and you're just working with your one sample, all you really need to be focused on at this point is to measure out your sample, describe how you're measuring it, and then what the appropriate tolerances are and what measure, how much error are you willing to accept on each point of measure. So I think that we've come to 30 minutes already. It's crazy how fast these times go by. And so I definitely want to say thank you so much again for joining us. We'll be back here on Friday for ACCFI Presents. We're actually bringing Sam Alexander back for part 2. So don't miss that. We would love to see you and get a chance to continue our conversation on sustainability, transparency, and the new normal after COVID-19. Also, we are, continuing to do this week after week. So feel free to come back and see us, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. That's going to be our normal time. We'd love to see you. I'm actually going to turn off my sharing so I can see you much better here. But we're really excited to kind of be able to continue to do these things. We are all affected by everything that's happening right now in our world, and we had to take some time off a couple of weeks ago to really, reset, our minds in that way. But I think that this is an ongoing thing, just like pandemic and what we're seeing across the world. And so know that we are well aware of that, and it matters to us. It matters to the college, and so we are responding to those things. If you want to see our response to it in our previous coffee talk from a little over a week ago, feel free to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and take a look at that video. That gives you a bit more information about where it is that we've been as a department, as an incubator, and what we can expect to see in the future. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't joined our email list, feel free to sign up. It's fashion.incubator@austincc.edu. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye.